Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're not back, but we are here. Muscle and Feels, episode 1 of the episodes, no numbers, because we've been making the rookie mistake of saying number X and then deciding to release the episodes in a different order, which then leaves me editing numbers out and having to do a bunch of stuff that is just, not very time efficient. I am one of your hosts, Patroklos Pak Andrew Skorakakis, aka Pak, and across me this time, not by my side, always by my side, but across me physically, Milo Wolf.
Hi everyone, it's me again.
Nice.
I had the idea of changing up the recording setup, so if the audio sounds better than usual, you're welcome. If it sounds worse, fuck you.
We've also now switched to recording multiple audio channels instead of being absolute amateurs and recording just one. So if one of us is sounding like shit, that means that I was lazy and I didn't spend time editing his audio. I was gonna say he or she, he or hers, his or hers. Fuck's sake, what's up with my English? Foreigner indeed. And we are here today with one of those episodes, a trip down memory lane. So buckle up, sip on your favorite caffeinated drinks. Today's caffeinated drink is a Rain energy drink, sour apple, total body fuel. Let's read the ingredients, or at least some of the key ingredients. We have BCAA aminos. How many, you ask? That's the wrong question. We have, I think I've Googled this, and it says that there's about 1 gram of BCAAs in here. So muscle protein synthesis at the moment through the roof. Nice light over there. Over here and over there. And yeah, we also have B vitamins, of course, B3, B6, B12, 0 sugar, and 200 milligrams of caffeine. Nice. What are you sipping on?
I'm sipping on bulk supplements. Water.
All of the bulk supplements
Not to
in
be
one.
confused with bulk supplements SPS affiliation.
Oh yeah, it's true. We are. This is that's crazy because this brand is it used to be called bulk powders.
It did, yeah.
And then they changed to bulk, which I think they probably they were probably like bulk powders. That wasn't the best name because they don't sell just powders,
yeah.
But they also are trying to target a similar audience to my protein. So the words bulk powders, it's not the best sort of.
But also, I guess for SEO, I'm not sure if it's a positive or negative. Might be a double-edged sword. But having the word bulk as your brand name, people search bulk for lifting weights all the time. So I'm not sure if it's
always with a positive take.
Indeed,
That's
I'm just
true.
a positive person.
I recently had one of our friends, acquaintances, Demis, his mother is on his case about him taking protein, and he had some blood work done, and his iron came back a bit lower than usual, nothing crazy. And she was like, "You're 25, your hair is thinning, you have cholesterol. When will you stop taking protein?" So that would be the type of person that would say, "You're getting these bulk powders, and you're ruining your health. Stop taking those bulk agents." So, extreme ADHD, topic of this episode, mistakes we've made in our lifting careers. It's a bit confusing now to look at this camera and this one, but I'll do my best to look at both, aka just stare at myself the whole episode. You know the vibes. Yeah, mistakes we've done in our lifting journeys, in our respective lifting journeys. I'll start first. No mistakes have been made. Thank you. How about you?
Wow, that was a very introspective. Thank you.
No mistakes by Milo as well. We'll see you next time. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. Peace.
On a serious note, I guess one place we can start with is supplements. Did you ever take any supplements that may not have been ideal?
Do you really want to go? Okay, you start first because my segment will definitely be longer.
I never really fucked it with supplements.
Of course.
So I got lucky. I bought my first protein powder, my first white, when I was 15 or so. And initially I didn't realize you need a shaker cup. So I got protein powder and I tried to mix it in a glass with a spoon. And it didn't go so well. And so that gave me a bad first impression.
Especially the back in the day protein powders.
It was the cheapest one as well. It was like there was like a mammoth on the
In Belgium?
tub. No, in Austria. Random village in Austria as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was bad. I just remember I hated the flavor. I think
Yeah.
protein powders have come a long way in the past 10 years or so.
Everything, bars included, bars especially.
Yeah.
I mean both actually.
No, agreed. But as far as supplements went, besides not knowing that a shaker was essentially mandatory for usage, the worst thing I might have done was it wasn't that bad. So when I was 17 or 18, I was a flexitarian, and so one thing I did for a while was take leucine with every meal. So I bought leucine, and before every meal,
A flexitarian.
I basically was vegan in my own consumption for ethical reasons mostly. And so before every meal, I would take a 2 to 4 gram dose of leucine, dry scoop it, and wash it down. And if you've never had leucine, which by your facial expressions, you've never had it, because if you did, you wouldn't be looking this amused by it. It's way worse than anything else you've experienced.
That was the amused face. It was that.
I know, but it's amused.
I've heard it's horrible.
It's really bad.
And I've heard that's why the EAA supplements, some of them
Underdose
that
leucine?
that are well dosed, taste like shit.
Yeah.
Taste very because of the leucine. I think Greg had touched on it. This is essentially SBS, just in bad English.
We have SBS at home. Meanwhile, SBS at home.
Nice.
Anyways, so leucine was one. A couple other things I did was I took beta-alanine for a while, and I hated it. It's just, in hindsight, not really worth the money or the effort or the side effects. I hate those tingles.
I love the tingles. I love the placebo effect of the tingles. Something.
They just distract me during my set. Like I feel uncomfortable, and so I'm not able to focus on my set as well. And then the final thing was first time I ever had caffeine or coffee for that matter. Really, I read, and this was when I was 17. Just bought my first sort of supplements in bulk, no pun intended. And I bought omega-3s, like 2,000 gellioles. I bought vitamin D. I bought citrulline malate, and I also bought caffeine pills. And because I saw in the evidence that the effective dose was 4 to 6 milligrams per kilogram, my first session at like 5 p.m. I was like, cool, let me try this out. Took 200 milligram pills for our first time ever having caffeine. And that session went well, but it felt like my head was going to explode at any given moment. I was deadlifting, and like thunder was literally coming down beside me.
Did you feel anxious?
I think so, but I also just felt so
empowered.
rushed that like it didn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then I learned my lesson because I didn't sleep until like 4 a.m.
It's so bad when, because you'd make the assumption that, okay, these are the evidence-based guidelines.
Yeah.
This is what I should take.
I looked at examine. Because like in studies, usually the biggest effects are seen with doses of like 4 to 6 milligrams per kilogram. And so I was like, oh,
one
that's
cup
what
of
it
coffee, like 100 milligrams for a first try would have been enough for you to be like,
wow, yeah. But I
Yeah.
had 4 times that. So that's the extent of my supplementation.
Wow. The rookie. If anything, a responsible sort of trial and error.
I would say so. And pretty evidence
journey.
based on the whole, except for maybe.
Let me take you back now. So 16 years old. First protein powder was Syntha 6 by BSN. Very, very nice tasting protein. No idea though. Like I thought, oh wow, I'm taking the protein powder now. The gains are coming in. But that wasn't anything bad. It was just a protein supplement. But then it is where I opened Pandora's box. So I got my first pre-workout, also from BSN, the infamous NO Explode, or famous. If you know, you know. If you're somebody who came up in the fitness world in the early 2010s, you've used and you know of NO Explode. It said creatine on it. I was like, wow, creatine, it's happening. I'm doing it. Not insanely dosed, but because I didn't drink coffee at the time, and I wasn't a caffeine drinker like I am now, I used to get an extreme buzz from it. But that then opened the door to a host of other supplements. When I started uni here in Southampton, 2013, I remember taking all kinds of, and actually the year before I moved to the UK, BCAA's intra-workout, pre-workout, of course, 2 different types of protein powder because I needed to have a whey, fast digesting, and I needed to have a casein one, slow digesting, special multivitamins. So I used to get the Gaspari Anavite, they used to be called. Omega-3 supplements, that's okay. But we also did colostrum in the form of BioGro.
I'm sorry, what the hell is colostrum?
Colostrum,
No idea what you're talking about.
the pre-milk fluid. You don't know what colostrum is?
I've never heard of that.
Really?
Yeah.
cool. The separate behind the scenes overview of colostrum. But essentially, the idea was that it contains growth factors.
Oh, okay. It's one
And
of them.
colostrum is widely used in baby formulas and for babies. And so every few years, there's a new supplement that comes out that that is supposed to be the next
Yeah.
big thing.
Beta-ine for a while, for example.
Yeah, but with BioGro, so which was colostrum, it wasn't presented as colostrum. It was presented as BioGro. This is like the tagline was fertilizer for your muscles, bioactive peptides that increase protein synthesis, etc. And they were like, it will put. They even claimed certain numbers, so they were like, it will put 40 pounds on your total or bench. And the studies they had used were studies that had two groups training, and one was taking the supplement. But because colostrum is also high in protein, essentially one group was supplementing with more protein than the other, and they saw better gains. But those studies were questionable to say the
Questionable, yeah.
least. And it was like Mark, what's his name? Mark Lobliner from Tiger Fitness, and a lot of other big YouTubers at the time, 2014, they were really pushing BioGrow. It was like, it's the next creatine. So we bought 5 tubs of that at first, no, like seriously, and then ironically, and a lot of those not illegal, but like later found to be illegal pre-workouts. So I've tried Mesomorph, Jacked, aka Jack 3D, but I think the company was just trying to call it Jacked, but with
Yeah,
a
of
3.
course. Yeah.
But everybody calls it Jack 3D. Craze, Craze had some weird shit in it. I had gone, I think, through 3 tubs of Craze,
Amazing.
and yeah, all kinds of other. The worst. Sorry, I digress. The worst was animal products. Animal Pack, essentially multivitamins.
Is Wolfpack an offshoot of Animal Pack? Now that I think about it.
No, because Animal Pack is all about the dungeon, grungy. Their marketing was spot on.
Is it spelled the same, Animal Pack, and
Yes, with a PAK.
that's suspicious to say the least. We're on to you.
We're on to you. The
There's a
third
bit
eye
of
of
a
truth.
situation going on there, isn't it?
But their marketing was extreme because they were using, I think, Frank McGrath
And
and
Steffi Cohen later on, I remember. Right?
but the main guy was Frank McGrath, who had these like insanely veiny forearms. If you
Oh,
remember,
yeah,
he had
I
that
do.
very sort of what do they
Looked
call
a
it?
bit disgusting, to be frank.
Yeah,
Varicose veins.
to
you
be
mean?
frank,
Indeed.
nice. But what do they call the grainy? He had that grainy look.
Yeah.
They had Evan Santopani, and their whole placebo, their whole marketing was black and white. Sort of commercials, dungeon vibes, and they sold a multivitamin broken down in different pills, the most inefficient way to take a multivitamin. And all those pills were in separate packs, so it gave you an extreme placebo of whoa.
Each one
I'm
is
I'm
designed
taking I'm taking a pack of 7 pills a day. I'm on some serious shit, so I took that as well. But there was a point where I was seriously like, wow, man, for me to make progress, I need 90 supplements per month. This is way too expensive.
to way too expensive.
And it felt I legit felt like, wow, how am I gonna sustain this?
Yeah, financially, you're on the verge of-
BCAAs, whey, casein, like those were must. Like you had to have three peri-workout and pre-bed supplements. Pre-workout was also near must. But yeah, there came a point where I now take some whey protein here and there, maybe some fish oil here and there, and the main supplement is creatine.
No, you've been lying to us. What about cream of rice? We know that shit ain't natty.
Yeah, cream of rice has been it's been a while. My fiance made the mistake of making it with milk for me once, and then I was like, well, now I want it every time with milk, and I don't want to make it myself.
Yeah, it's a mistake to make.
Nice. Yeah, so that was definitely one. Like you didn't make a mistake. I think yours.
Not really, no chronic mistakes or no like, oh, I need all the supplements available.
You looked at examine.com at 17.
I did, yeah.
We were buying BioGro, overpriced colostrum, and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah, so one mistake that I've made and you can learn from is you you definitely don't need a bunch of different supplements. If your diet consists of mostly whole foods and you're getting in enough protein through your diet, Maybe you can supplement with some with a protein powder of your choice, but other than that, you have most of your bases covered. Creatine is an ergogenic supplement worth looking into and potentially worth taking, but if we quote the infamous pyramid by the good doctor, Dr. Eric Helms, calories at the bottom of the pyramid, then macronutrients, micronutrients, nutrient timing, and then at the very, very top, so the of least importance, supplements. So yeah.
Indeed. I think I'll have a lot more mistakes to speak of when it comes to training and diet than you probably. Because I started lifting quite early when I was like 14 or so. And so I distinctly remember certain things I did that weren't ideal in hindsight.
Like what?
So for one thing, when I started lifting, I was around, I'd been doing push-ups and curls with a 2.5 kilogram dumbbells in my room, and I'm not joking, they were between 2.5 kilograms, and then eventually I graduated to 5 kilograms, and then eventually I got to 10 kilograms, But I was doing that when I was 10 to 14 years old, but when I was 14 is when I actually started going to the gym. I had to get my mum to sign up with me, because otherwise they wouldn't let me sign up, but my mum went a total of one time, I think, so it was just one of those loopholes. And when I started lifting, I thought I was fat, but I was 6'2", and weight-wise, I think I was maybe between like 130 and 160 pounds.
Boo!
And
for using pounds.
Okay, so maybe like 55 to 70 kilograms or so, which is quite skinny for 6'2" or 188 centimeters.
Yes, quite skinny.
But I thought it was fat because I had a bit of belly going on. And when I was younger, I had been a bit chunky, let's say. And then I suddenly grew a foot and wasn't chunky anymore. But in my head, I was still like, I'm still a bit fat. And so I thought, I've got a belly, let me go keto. And so I did keto. And I did keto when I got my first protein powder as well, which was me spending 2 months in Austria in a rural village with my grandparents, with basically like almost no Wi-Fi and stuff like that. And so imagine you're at dinner and you have to explain to your relatively traditional Austrian family that, no, I'm just going to have this cheese by itself. I'm not going to have the bread. And
what kind of dinner was that? Were the others eating cheese and bread? I thought you were going
to be fair, in Austria and rural Austria, and I think in Germany as well, oftentimes for breakfast or dinner you have like just bread with cheese and sausage and stuff like that. But anyways, I went keto and I made zero gains. I was also doing a variety of other stuff at the time, like having tricep only days and ab only days. So, just not ideal.
I'll one up you once again. So
Wow.
I started as a fat kid, and I've ended up as a fat kid. No, but I started at 110 kilos, 220 to 230 in pounds at 5'10", and I started lifting and got a lot of my newbie gains. And because I'm relatively blessed genetically in terms of my clavicular structure and my chest from my dad, I put on some muscle mass, and because I had the fat to cushion it, I looked more muscular than I actually was in certain body parts. But I then decided that, hey, it's time to lose weight. I had never been thin in my life, and I didn't know much about training or lifting. And what I did was I crash dieted, but I had no idea about calories, I wasn't weighing myself. I was just eating clean foods, but I'm talking about like I wasn't allowed to eat white bread, white rice, anything that wasn't considered a bodybuilding food. I was actually Googling foods to check if they're allowed, like sushi, etc. Running, I think, every day. So jogging around a football stadium. And I dropped 80 pounds within a few months, around 40 kilos. I went down to 83. I was pretty skinny. And from then onwards, I started learning a bit more about eating. But it was long before I learned about calories. So I did the whole clean eating. I remember I was eating plain white fish with brown rice, no salt, and a bit of spices. I did fasting. 20-hour fasting window, 4-hour eating window. Sometimes I also rocked like a 36-hour fast, and 48 was my biggest. I combined the fasting with low carb. Then I did carb cycling.
What did you eat when you got to eat in that case?
The clean foods, just a lot of them. But
so like what, a kilogram of chicken breast?
It was like,
Sausage?
a lot of chicken, or when I was doing the low carb, I was doing breaded chicken. and
Breaded chicken.
yeah.
Did you know breaded chicken has breadcrumbs and bread is carbs?
Yeah, it was like it was the sort of higher fat,
Yeah.
lower carb.
Ketones.
Yes, and
Fat
it
burning
was,
machine.
but it was combining everything, and I was making the mistake. I remember watching the Hodge twins talk about fasting, because they had made, it was at the time when Martin Berkhan had made 16/8 fasting. Hello, Mia. We have a guest, a cat.
For our listeners, my cat Mia, who is quite shy and usually doesn't come out, has just come out, and so she may make her first appearance today, on camera.
On camera. It's rare. I've only seen that cat up front, I think, 10 times in my life.
If you want to see this cat, you have to subscribe to her YouTube channel, otherwise she won't show.
Yes, and
She's
then
told
you
me.
can see my cats as well. You won't, because we're at Milo's. But I was watching the Hodge twins promote fasting, and I remember distinctively how they had said, hey, I can see the difference day by day. So I remember being in a complete state of body dysmorphia, because at the time I was around 90 kilos, relatively lean, so I could see like a 4-pack, and I had some veins going on. Obviously,
I can
still
just see one pack.
still lifting for a couple of years, but my standards were so high that I was like, why am I not getting significantly leaner day by day? So I was trying to do fasting, low carb, deficit, high intensity interval training after lifting, while being a smoker back then. And yeah, it was a pretty bad sort of setup, because obviously that resulted in me at some point being fed up with the diet, going through like a couple of days of eating like an absolute pig, and then getting back to it, and it was just like a vicious cycle. So the lesson here is learn about calorie, energy balance, understand that it will take time to build muscle. You'll probably need to spend a good amount of time building muscle, and we'll get to that separately. And when you're losing fat, give it at least 8 weeks of consistently seeing decreases in your waist circumference and body weight. But yeah, don't think that low carb or fasting or any other sort of technique, it may be good for you to try to use those to manage your calories, but they won't provide superior fat loss to just being in a deficit.
100%. And to add on to that, one thing I think when you're starting out lifting isn't really intuitive, but it's quite important, is to actually weigh yourself consistently.
Yeah.
So when I started lifting when I was like 14 to 16, first of all, the reason I earlier gave a range of 130 to 160 pounds was because I didn't really weigh myself. I don't have any records of it.
Sure.
And so what would often happen when I started lifting was I would try to bulk. I would weigh myself once, be like, oh, cool, I'm around 150 pounds. And then not weigh myself like 6 months, weigh myself again, realize, oh shit, I lost 10 pounds or I gained 30 pounds. And I wouldn't even realize it. So how do you know if you're bulking or cutting if you're not weighing yourself at least a few times a week?
Yeah.
I think that's really important as a beginner, and it's one of the most important habits, besides actually lifting weights, obviously. One of the most important habits that you can learn.
Yeah, even if you're not cutting, I've been weighing myself consistently for the past 6 or 7 years. Actually, I'm chatting shit. 5 to 6 years, and some people will say I don't want to weigh myself so that I don't feel the pressure of the daily weigh-in. But okay, I understand that for some people it may be like that, and there are alternatives. But for me personally, as somebody who had always, as a kid, issues with his body weight, it has really helped sort of disassociate from the numbers and just treat the number as a number, but also detect trends and sort of be able to predict that, okay, I've eaten late today, haven't slept well, my weight will probably be higher, and then just learn how my body responds. But daily weigh-ins are great, are also a great lesson. You're definitely right there, because I remember I would weigh myself some days and then some other days, and it was very difficult to know whether the scale was moving in the right direction.
100%. As we're speaking, Pak is reaching for my favorite fidget spinner, which is a very important tool to have during our podcasts, which I'll give him.
Thanks.
Moving on, I think so far in this podcast, there's been a disturbing consistent structure and pattern, which has been, I say I've made mistakes about something, you say, no you haven't, let me tell you about mine. And then I get blown away. So I guess we need to move on to training now. And this time I'm making you show your chords first. What's the worst training stuff you've done?
Not so. I started similarly to you, training in. I went to a boarding school, and that's where I started lifting with my good friend and aka brother Ilias. Shout out to Ilias if he's listening. He got me into training. We had a pair of dumbbells in the room, and what I would do is do bicep curls before bed every day. That's it. Zero other training. But then I got in the gym. We had a school gym, and we used to live together. So things started completely like there was zero guidance, and I would not do any direct tricep work. I would do some leg training, but it was just like a YOLO split with legs done very little at the beginning, then done.
Nothing's changed.
A lot has changed, and yeah, it was just a weird split. Moving forward, I did the typical bro splits. The YOLO, the worst was I think high intensity interval training, but where I was just blasting sprints and high intensity interval training sprints and light jogging after my workouts. I did not track training for the first few years, so that was a mistake. But there was nothing too crazy being done there. I trained legs properly, then at some point transitioned to strength training, your 5x5, and then a bit of powerlifting. But yeah, I haven't made any extreme mistakes. I was humble enough to always have relatively good form, and the one thing that we did for a few months that was a bit shameful was the whole all you bro. There was a few all you bro sets done with some of my good friends back in uni where I was like, that's 10 kilos more than I did last time for 2 reps. Now I did 5. Was it really all me? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, I will not take the spotlight anymore. I'll pass it on to you, and then I'll just one up you after you've done.
Wow.
Tell us your side.
Truly game theory worthy of Animal Pack and Wolf Pack. Right, so what's the worst thing I've done? I've done a lot of things. I started lifting with a body part split where I had a tricep day, I had an ab day, where I was doing like 20, 30 sets of tricep isolation work, like maybe close grip bench and then just isolation work. And with some force reps at the end, I remember I was training with a friend of mine at the time, and we were doing push downs, and we were manually resisting each other's push downs as well, beyond failure. So I'm not sure why I did that. I was watching Mike Chang of Six Pack Shortcuts back in the day.
Did you take Mike Chang seriously?
Yeah, keto absolutely. So I'm pretty sure why I did keto at the time.
Wow.
Besides just prevailing dogma at the time that keto is how you lose fat if you're fat. But I actually listened to his advice relatively closely. Another source of information I had at the time, which I didn't listen to closely enough because they're actually okay, was Buff Dudes. And Buff Dudes are actually quite decent. Like, they're not outstanding.
Yeah, they're a bit normie, but they're okay.
Exactly. Yeah, so Buff Dudes. Besides that, after my body part split, I actually started taking things a bit more seriously. And to be honest, for a long time, yes, I did occasionally try and write my own program, but I followed a lot of programs by other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of went back and forth between following good programs and really bad ones. So I'm pretty sure I followed Christian Thibodeau's superhero program when I was like 15 or 16, which had me supersetting a variety of exercises, amongst them supersetting 4 sets of 8 on squats and 4 sets of 8 on deadlifts without rest.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure that's how I got my lower back injured for the first time ever. So, not saying it causes injury, don't sue me. Allegedly injured my back, hearsay.
4 sets of 8 back-to-back, squats and deadlifts. Wow.
It was quite the program. And then gradually, I actually followed one of Greg Knuckles' 28 programs for squat, and that's where I started seeing some decent progress on my squat.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly enough, first 2 or 3 of lifting, I didn't really gain that much strength. Especially on a bench. My bench was decent when I started. I could bench maybe like 60 kilograms first time I benched. But then it sort of just didn't increase much. And same with squats and deadlifts, where after 2 or 3 years, I could maybe deadlift like 130 for a rep and maybe like squat 110 for a rep.
Mm-hmm.
But then around that time, I'd say I started following the squat program and the 28 programs, like Knuckles. I didn't really bench seriously because at the time, I was playing basketball, plus in general, I had a weird approach to training where if something was hard, I liked doing it. If it wasn't hard, I didn't really do it. And so in combination with my shoulders feeling a bit off during bench, I didn't really bench. I did a lot of face pulls because apparently they're magic for your shoulders. You can never get injured.
Shoulder health.
Indeed. You can never get injured if you're doing face pulls. That is how it works.
Posture.
Indeed. But yeah, so I started following better programs as I was getting 16, 17. When I was 17, I actually kind of MacGyvered a version of Augustus 753. So I watched all his videos, figured out what he was doing, etc. Because like, damn, that's a nice program. Because when I was 15 or 16, I actually did weightlifting for a few months. I went to weightlifting gym and trained weightlifting for like 2-3 months maybe.
The dark past of Milo Wolf.
Indeed. And I had the, if you're watching this, shout out to you, I had the most curmudgeonly, bitter old man coach ever. And
I think that comes. That's like a
weightlifting.
It's like
it's
a
a
must. You
stereotype,
want to
yeah,
be a weightlifting coach?
So here's a horror story. I started lifting. I was kind of enjoying it, kind of not. But then I think what tipped me over the edge was he had me training 3 times a week. Fair enough. Had me practicing the lift. Had me squatting 3 times a week. Cool. Fair enough. A few months into training, he reveals to me that all this time, like my hands were hurting. You know, like my skin was a bit fucky and so forth. He reveals to me that all this time, just to see me suffer and presumably build work ethic, quote unquote, or something, he had me doing all of the Olympic weightlifting lifts and everything with a powerlifting bar with really aggressive knurling, just to see me suffer. At which point I was like, okay. I also remember another instance of me sending him a starting strength article and asking him what he thinks. In hindsight now, I can realize why he was like, I really don't want to talk about this. But it was basically why the Olympic lifts aren't as good as the squat, the bench, and deadlift for building explosivity for athletes. In hindsight, I wasn't the smartest either. But anyways, I
But
just
you asked
enjoyed...
the question, though.
Indeed. I just enjoyed power building style training at the time. And so eventually I got back to more like Matt Augustus 753, where you do some heavy work, a lot of hypertrophy work, and have a day for squatting, a day for benching, a day for lifting, a day for overpressing. And yeah, then from then on, it got slightly more obscure. So when I was 17, I moved to uni, and then for a year or so, I had a period of pretty weird training. So I've done it all in a sense. I've done the weightlifting, I've done relatively low frequencies of like 3 times a week, and then I did several things. For one, I had a period where I did like between 8 and 12 exercises a session, where I was doing like direct neck training, direct trap training, direct forearm flexor and extensor training.
Wow.
I was doing everything, and I was adding sets week to week and everything. So I remember there was a session where I was like, okay, it's 5 p.m. I need to get up at 8:30. I've got about 12 exercises and like 5 sets on each or something. And I just had like 400 grams of dry oatmeal before that I obviously cooked first, but it was a lot of oatmeal. I just went to the gym. 4 hours later, come out, done, and it was a weird time.
Why?
Because I read all the volume stuff.
The volume stuff, and
Indeed.
this is where the new revolution led by yours truly, but led by in the mainstream media by Dr. Jeff Nippard, aka just Jeff Nippard, with his minimalism YouTube series. I think will turn the tide a bit from insanity to, hey, you could do a solid amount of sets, but not fucking 50 sets per session.
Minimalist training for minimal results, I say.
No. For near optimal results, I don't know if the light is good there. I'm going to cut the part where I flexed if it's not good. But yeah.
Well, anyways, after that, I gradually became more reasonable.
Crazy. The forearm. The forearm training.
I mean, okay, so in my defense, there is a decent rationale to training certain muscle groups at least a little bit. So assuming there are some diminishing returns to training a body part directly, like for example, let's say you don't do any direct trap training. Training it once a week may provide a pretty good yield on your training time and recovery compared to not training it at all, you get me, for trap growth. So that's why I was including even smaller muscle groups at the time. Anyways, around second year of university, I actually got into more RP style training. I also ran what is now the Strong by Science program, which used to be called Average to Savage. Shout out Average to Savage.
Yeah.
But around second year, I got more into RP style training and started training twice a day and stuff. And that was relatively high volumes, but it was reasonable in that it was at least auto-regulated in terms of, how's your performance? How's your soreness?
Mm-hmm.
And there was one infamous and now rather famous summer where a friend of mine, shout out to Chris, and me were just staying in my university's town, which there's nothing going on in summer because it's a college town, university town. There's nothing going on really if there's no students.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed there for like 2 months. And because I was bulking up to around 240 pounds at the time, I was over 240 pounds, and I had no stress because I wasn't really coaching that much yet. I didn't have any lectures, I had no stress, and I was sleeping like 10 hours a night, and I was bulking, no stress, training 13 times a week. And consistently for like 2 or 3 blocks in a row, last week of training of the block before deload, we would get up to like 200 sets a week total. Keep in mind this was all like RP 8, 9.
Hard sets.
Yeah, like RDLs, squats. Like I was squatting like 3 times a week, RDLing twice a week. It was recovery can get quite good if you're otherwise unemployed.
Yeah, I remember those days, man. Those were good days. Uni days, I wasn't doing nearly as much volume as you, but I didn't. I was sleep. I mean, I still sleep well, but back then, because there was other substances involved, before bed, sleep was really, really, really good. And I remember it would be. I was also YOLO bulking, so I reached my highest was I think 300 pounds for that was a couple of days on the scale, but like around 280 was the usual weight. But we would eat pizza almost every day, along with some good stuff, some oats, some berries, etc. But it was like 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day, 10 hours of sleep, 300 plus grams of protein, very little stress, very little to do, just focusing on my degree at the time. Sure, learning, reading.
Only stress was figuring out where to buy your next clothing because
that's the point where I called it a day and then lost 40 pounds. No, not 40 pounds. More.
40 kilograms.
Yeah, 40
so
kilograms.
90 pounds.
Yeah, but again, your mistake was what exactly? Doing too much?
Yeah, I think my mistake was not really just taking a reasonable approach and sticking with it. So I would also program hop a lot at the time because I was reading stuff by Menno Henselman, so what have you at the time, and Borge Fagerli or Mike Isbertal or Greg Buckles. And I would just keep switching my approach. And I think ultimately, this is easy for us to say, but looking at what the evidence says, picking some sort of middle ground in that range, for example, frequency-wise, 2 to 4 times a week, maybe per muscle group, you're good. Same with volume, somewhere between 5 and 15 sets to start with per muscle group, you're good. And then seeing how you respond from that in terms of recovery and everything, that's a much better place to start than thinking, oh no, if I'm doing 7 sets instead of 13, it's not good, and then overshooting the mark and training full body every day ahead of time. We did that as well.
And with your perfectionist personality, I think what was happening there is like you were thinking, okay, this is like concrete evidence, or even if it wasn't, even if you understood that it's a bet at best, you were like, cool, this is in my control. I want to gain as much muscle as possible, so I'm going to do as much as possible. And like I will do direct forearm training 3 times a week to make sure. But I think what is coming out of everything that we're sharing now is find reputable people to follow so that you don't have to go through so much trial and error, because especially back then,
just get a PhD.
Just get a PhD, easy game. Buy it from the same website we're buying ours, buyaphd.com. Use code Milo.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Milo 10 or Pack 20.
Wow.
One thing you can try, ADHD. I have it. I'm diagnosed. I can say it. It's you can't cancel me. But the one thing that I've been trying lately and has worked on a number of occasions, if you go on a website and they have a promo code for, let's say, 10% off, and the promo code is promo10, try other numbers as well at discounts. So try 20, try 30. There's a high chance that they've left other promotions running, and there was a time where I got 60% off. Recently, I got from 10, I went to 20%. Anyways, give it a try.
Better yet, just download Honey and call it a day.
Yeah, or that. It's true. That's a fair point. But it's not available on all websites. In my defense,
that's fair enough.
So okay, back to the topic. Find reputable sources, because back in the day, which is easy nowadays. Back in the day, we would. Like, people would come out and present different training approaches or supplements as the hello Mia, very cute. They would present different training approaches or nutrition approaches as the new best thing. Evidence, the literature was not limited, but like in some areas it was non-existent, especially in our niche. Now it's just limited, and evidence-based fitness was just starting. So, like, as Milo said, you'd start program 1 because you heard guy from T Nation saying it's the best thing. Then the slightly more evidence-based guy would tell you, hey, try my routine, the 6-3-4, and so on and so forth. But nowadays, you can follow people like Eric Helms, the guys over at Stronger by Science. Listen to a few of their podcasts and be more or less, or download like Eric's book, Muscle and Strength
Pyramids. Yeah.
Pyramids, and you're pretty much covered in terms of your baseline knowledge. And then you don't need to go through this unnecessary trial and error and placebo nocebo back and forth. Because the moment I found something new, I was like, ah, man, all this time I've been doing the worst thing for my physique or for my strength.
The reason we're laughing here is because my cat is being very cute.
I have not seen Milo's cat many times in my life, so I think she finally feels comfortable around me. And lastly, I wanted to say, you said training mistakes, and okay, yeah, the hyperbole with the volume was a bit laughable. But have you ever done I nearly made a turn into delusion land when I had just started with shrugs. So there were a couple of times where I did
yes,
those.
I have. I've shrugged like 190, I think. For 10
Yeah,
or something.
but I did like the 7-plate shrug for like
Oh my god. Damn. And look at your traps now. The same as before.
the same as before, just bigger and thicker. But I don't.
They were already big and thick before.
Thank you. Nice. I try to respond there, but you got me.
Indeed.
Nice.
Yeah. So what I think technique-wise, what are the biggest mistakes you've made technique-wise on different lifts?
I wouldn't say
Long muscle lengths.
yeah, I mean, I was usually pretty okay, pretty decent in terms of not overdoing it. Always squatted to depth. When I started squatting, because I was pretty heavy, squats came naturally to me. So I hit 200 kilos within the first month or so of training, but there wasn't anything too crazy that I did in terms of technique. Sometimes I would be too impatient with wanting to add load, but I never reached the point where I would sacrifice technique. The one thing I would say is mentally, the mistake I made was I was focusing too much on lifting heavier or having a weight on the bar or the machine that was heavy, and not sort of disassociating from the number itself and just being like, cool, as long as the reps are strict and I'm getting close to failure and I'm slowly progressing whatever load I'm using, that's fine. But I was never the guy. Like, you would never catch me doing YOLO reps or anything like that.
I agree. I think there's two things you brought up that are pretty helpful. The first one is, as you said, the load on the bar itself isn't all that meaningful for stimulus, right? Like whether you're lifting 200 pounds or 205 pounds for your bench, that doesn't really make a difference to how productive that session is for making you stronger.
Yes.
It might feel meaningful to you, for example, with 195 versus 200 because of the number, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, oftentimes it just doesn't make a difference. And so as a new lifter, oftentimes you're tempted into saying, oh, let me round it up, and then you overshoot your RPEs, and then generally you actually make the session less. Whereas once you become a bit more mature as a lifter, I think, a bit less attached to the numbers, you can make it better.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I'd say, and correct me if I'm wrong here,
You're wrong.
one thing I did at least when I was new into lifting was overthink the hell out of technique.
No, I didn't do that.
Really?
It was because I was like, cool, I'm doing the tricep push downs. I'm doing obviously the tables in the middle now, but I never, it's different personalities as well. I was a high school dropout guy. You went to uni at 16 or 17.
Uni at 16. You did or I did?
You did.
Oh,
17.
17, yeah.
No, but I wasn't a perfectionist, so it was like, and I was lifting with other guys. So
Yeah, that was less of a, yeah.
and then the other guys were also people that were very athletic and came from a martial arts point of view, and there was a bit of a let's go, bro, and just lift hard, and it was all just regular technique. It wasn't anything that you'd look at twice because it was bad or because it was exceptional.
Sure. Yeah, in my case, I think I was always a bit of a nerd about lifting after the first 6 months, 12 months. So I remember, for example, I was making YouTube videos when I was 15, 16 about lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I was obsessing about was sumo positioning of where the hips are, for example, when you start the pull. And in hindsight, a lot of these details, especially with technique and just in general about very small aspects of lifting, a lot of them just don't really matter that much once you zoom out a little bit and you're like, oh, spend 5 days lifting. it doesn't really matter.
No, I guess in the context of strength sports, or and especially the more complex the exercise, the more those details may matter. But it will also depend on the personality of the lifter if you want as a coach to focus on these things. Or anyways, I'm not going to sidetrack, but I wanted to say that if you're an average person who wants to get like jacked and strong, the way like we're talking 90th plus percentile jacked and strong when you compare it to the average gym goer, I'm not even going to say the average person, you overly focusing to the point where it may be noceboing you on whether your elbows slightly flared up on the bench press or your hips moved slightly faster than ideal. I think is more counterproductive than anything. And for me as a lifter, it was very intimidating when I was coming up, because even now, if you follow, let's say, Paul Carter, or even I feel like, what the fuck is this, man? Like every exercise is broken down to a point where it just feels like I can imagine how it feels for an average guy who's just coming up and seeing this, and it's like, wow. I thought all I needed to do was
Some back training.
and make sure I'm not fucking yanking the weight. Now I need to lat pull downs turn out to be horseshit, and I should be doing something else.
Lat pull downs? You mean teres major pull downs?
And Ben Yanes, it's 2022 and you're still walking on your feet. Ben Yanes.
It's really the new athlete in X.
Yeah, man. And okay, I get it from a, hey, let's hypothetically geek out about this and say which one would
Why
be.
dumbbell tricep training is killing your gains.
Yeah, well, there's no need to go down the, hey, it's 2022 and you're still, what was it? You're still doing bent over rows was
Or
one.
something. Yeah, I don't even know.
But it was a bit too much. I get the marketing placebo though. The one mistake I made was overly trust authority figures, even though what they were saying did not make much sense to me. For example, hey, heavy bent over rows, performed explosively for thick back. When doing things like that, like Pandlay rows, which depending on who you look at will look different, I never felt my back. I was like, okay, I'm yanking a weight from the floor. My torso angle will change because, and it will be near upright because it's a lot of weight, and I don't get sore on my back. I don't feel any connection, but I would keep doing them because I would see people like even people like Kyler Woolham.
Yeah, Caleb Woolman, yeah.
Kaler, who's like a world-class deadlifter, say, yeah, this is the best accessory for deadlift. Other bodybuilders say, yeah, these are it for back thickness. But yeah, it didn't make much sense. But because I didn't know better, I was like, hey, they said it, I'll just follow it.
Yeah. You know, I think a lot of these mistakes boil down to two things. Not all of them, but some of them do, I think. One is a lack of patience with regards to understanding that time spent lifting is the main thing in helping you reach your physique that you want, and strength as well. And the second thing is probably also just a comparison game. So oftentimes you think you should have the same physique that the X person does. And when you're new into lifting, odds are, if you're new to lifting, you don't have that physique yet. And so you think, okay, what are they doing? And oftentimes you're quick to buy into some bullshit as a result. When in reality, a lot of these details, like how exactly you do your row, whether you do lat pull downs or not for lat growth, or you do like a high row, what have you. A lot of these relative details don't really matter that much compared to time. And oftentimes how someone else looks is not really a result of their training or their nutrition or their supplements they're taking as much as their genetics. And that's not something you can impact very much at all, you know?
Yeah, just to clarify, you mean like the actual shape and the proportion,
yeah,
etc.
and their body fat as well to an extent, like how their low body fat looks, how their abs look, and what have you. Because a lot of times as a newbie, you're very focused on certain things.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think oftentimes the impatience and the comparison game does you a disservice in learning what sources to trust over which ones.
Yeah, and that was a great segment into, I think that was my biggest mistake, is comparing, having extremely unrealistic standards. Comparing myself constantly to people that had been lifting for 15 plus years, many of them on PDs, many of them genetic freaks. And at the same time, comparing my physique the way I looked at the end of the day in the mirror with bad lighting at home, lifting for 1 year, to some guy's picture on Facebook back in the day,
Yeah.
under top light with a pump, all those other variables, 20 years, 15 years of lifting, maybe PDs, etc. And thinking that, wow, if I'm not looking like a fucking superhero the whole time, what am I doing? It's like I'm
Absolutely.
doing something wrong. When in reality, even now, we go to any sort of public place with a T-shirt, we will be some of the biggest guys there. Not because we are mass monsters, but because realistically speaking, with average people, compared to the average person or even the average commercial gym, you don't need to look like a superhero to look jacked.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, even with average person genetics, if you just lift consistently, you get to a pretty good a place compared to the average person who doesn't lift, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of these mistakes can be chalked up to being impatient and following the wrong people and stuff like that, usually.
Yeah, for sure. And also reminding yourself that you are the top of the field, or the top bodybuilders, or the genetic freaks,
Yeah.
because there are some real freaks out there that we're following. That is not the standard. And just because you may not be up to that standard, that doesn't mean you may be less jacked than them, but you're still, just because you're not Warren Buffett, if you're somebody who is wealthy, you're still wealthy.
Yeah,
What are you doing if
absolutely.
you're not Warren Buffett? Get your grind on.
This is our 17th side hustle of the day.
Reverse psychology.
Nice.
Nice.
I think that wraps up the episode quite nicely.
Very nice. Until next time, then, I guess.
Until next time.
Peace.
Peace.